is Jessica Ortiz, and this is my policy and advocacy exploration on inclusion of children with disabilities in early childhood programs. The introduction to this policy. So, this policy will cover the inclusion of children with disabilities in early childhood programs. The policy ensures that children with disabilities are given access to the early childhood programs, services, and experiences that the children without disabilities have in a state or local community. The policy also supports equal educational opportunities for eligible children with disabilities from birth through age 21. The Individuals with Disability Education Act requires that appropriate early intervention services are made available to eligible infants and toddlers with disabilities and their families. And then the Americans with Disability Act prohibits discrimination in all the services, programs, and activities of any state or local government. This being also like public spaces, employment, or educational spaces, regardless of whether they receive federal funds. My reason of interest in this policy was to increase my learning and experience. I have 1 year of experience volunteering in an inclusive early childhood setting. I was with 3 children with autism and 2 with ADHD, and the class was of 25 children. So there was a lot going on, but we did have a very big space. We had an outdoor play yard, and then a pretty big indoor space that was half the space of the outdoor space. And this wasn't surprising because it was a college-funded child development center. So I did expect there to be higher quality resources and funding. And then at the current volunteer center where I am right now, it is a home-based preschool and daycare. So they struggled to modify the environment to become inclusive and be an appropriate environment for a child with autism that we recently got. I want to learn about ways to promote students with inclusion and increase peer engagement without restricting any of the students or making some of the students feel scolded for the way they're playing. I really want to learn how to balance an inclusive classroom. And then policy history includes segregation, legislative changes, and program modifications for inclusion. In the early 1900s, children with disabilities were segregated and placed in institutions, being denied basic education and that their non-disabled peers were receiving. And then in 1954, the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court case desegregated public schools for African American children, which influenced future efforts to include children with disabilities. For example, in 1972, the Economic Opportunity Act required that at least 10% of Head Start slots serve children with disabilities, and this is still encouraged today. And then in 1975, the Education for All Handicapped Children's Act, also known as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, mandated public schools to provide free and high-quality education to children with disabilities and for them to be educated in the least restrictive environment, which would mean that they are taught in the same space as their non-disabled peers. In 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act established civil rights protection for people with disabilities in public spaces, education, and employment, regardless if there is federal funding or not. And some suggestions for advancements that I have is just having inclusive practices and diverse assistive learning tools. I want to promote having the least restrictive spaces so all children can engage with the materials and feel included. I also want to ensure that my class has assistive learning tools that are appropriate for the child's age, language, and skills. Have the tech tools that can be modified to their language, and then also include visuals that children can utilize. My advocacy plan is for educators and caregivers, and it includes increasing understanding of policy and inclusion. I want to focus on gaining more knowledge on the policy and efforts for future improvements by joining seminars and staying updated with early childhood education websites and blogs. Like the Bright Wheel website, I find a lot of good resources on there. There's also really reliable blogs on there too. And I want to share my learning and resources through live and recorded seminars that families can join in person or online. And the information will also be shared on pamphlets and newsletters that will be sent home and electronically. My call to action includes promoting an inclusive classroom is essential for a child's learning experience because children with disabilities learn about community and how to interact with peers of different backgrounds and abilities. Having a diverse and inclusive educational setting helps prepare children for the diversity they will come across in their future. Not to forget, by creating an environment where all children are respected, welcomed, heard, caregivers are reducing the chances of disruptive behaviors and or bullying while promoting positivity and inclusivity. And right here I have some examples of like pamphlets that I would pass out about just inclusion with disabilities, how I want to host my seminars and meetings, and then how I would like my classroom to look, not segregating the students, having them all using the same space and sharing materials and learning the same material as well. And that